Produced by Prairie House Productions. All content is the property of Nordstrom's Automotive Incorporated and may not be used without our permission. Copyright Nordstrom's Automotive, Inc. Now, let's go under the hood with the Nordstrom's Motor Medics.
Welcome to the End of the Hood Show. I am Russ Evans along with Shannon Nordstrom. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for listening, Hoodies. Can we do a redo on that one?
Tune in and tune up.
It's been about once every year, 2 years. I screw that up.
Well, that's all right. We do this at only once a week,
Here,
right?
Just give me a Scooby-Doo redo.
Hey, thanks for joining us on Under the Hood.
Welcome, Hoodies. Thanks for tuning in so we can help you tune up. There we go. That's the way that's supposed to go.
All right, 866-594-4150. This is the End of the Hood Show. You can call us, and we'll get you on the air and talk to you about your car problems.
Russ, before we get on to the calls, we've got a bunch stacked up today. We
do.
We need to give proper tribute to a friend that we lost, and a good friend. Vic Jaco passed away, and Vic was instrumental in us expanding our network of radio stations.
Yeah, we had a war back and forth to see who could, a little friendly competition more likely, to see who could get the most, and he did really well.
Give the quick bio on how you met Vic.
Vic came into our shop in 2012, I think it was. It was about 15 years ago. Walked in and said, I was listening to your radio show and thought you guys could probably help me out, and I would like a window fixed in my 97 Suburban. So I said, well, we can handle that, and we took care of it. And an hour later, he said, I really like your show, and I'm on the road doing bank marketing, and that only leaves me a few hours a day to do that because they have banker's hours. Do you think you need somebody to sell your show, maybe expand it? I know you're on in some stations. And I said, yeah, maybe we could talk about that. So he went home and put together his little campaign, and he called me back a couple hours later, and he was right on it. When he said, I'm going to do it, he always did what he said he was going to do. And he got that done. And I said, well, go for it, Vic. And he started selling. And I thought, boy, I'm feeling a little lazy. I better start calling too. So we went back and forth, and before you knew it, we were over 100 stations, and things moved along really well. And the last Vic was only 70 years old, and in the last 4 years or so, he had some heart issues come up, and really, faded quicker than I thought. We were just talking the Friday before he passed away.
It's sad how fast that changed.
Yeah, we said, I know he's a little slower, but, another 10 years maybe, and it was another 2 days. It was really, really shocking for us, heartbreaking, and we'll miss Vic. He was he was a very strong Christian man, and you knew that when you met him within 2 minutes of talking to him, no matter who you were.
Yeah, how was his introduction to you?
He said, hello, I'm Vic Jaco. I listen to your radio show. I need my car fixed. I'm a Christian. I work with the Gideons, and I do bank marketing. Now tell me about yourself. And it was a less than 30-second intro.
It was the elevator speech, and he had it down.
Yeah, and then he wouldn't stop until he knew about you and what you did. So
Vic was a gentleman.
Very good friend. Yes.
He was a faithful man.
And he was a DJ.
Yeah, he used to be Johnny Knight at one time.
KISD.
We found that out later, I think, as we talked with him.
We did, and he was actually, if you were in South Dakota, if you're a South Dakota native, you know about the big floods they had back in Rapid City in the day, and where he was working at the time back then, he was actually out riding around in the helicopter with Steve Hemmingson.
Oh, there we go.
When they were doing the filming of that, and had some great stories to tell about that. Just amazing, some of the stuff he did.
Vic was a gentleman. We'll miss him. He was a very, very kind man. Anybody he met would, like you said, know he was a Christian. And we know that he is gloriously probably holding court in the coffee shop in heaven, and has a big smile on his face. And to Vicky and the family, our deepest sympathies go out. And thank you to allowing to borrow him to us for some time that he spent helping the Under the Hood show.
Yeah, we're going to go now to a lighter note, the regular show, and we're going to talk to Brad in Alabama with a 2002 Z28. How you doing, Brad?
Doing good, sir.
Tell me about your Z28.
Okay, the only problem I have, it's a head cam car with long tubes, full exhaust, so it's just a little bit of a hot rod. But when I go to crank it, I'll put the key in, turn the ignition on, I wait for my fuel pump to prime, and I turn the car over, and it will not start on the first turnover. It doesn't matter if it's a half a second or 3 seconds, but as soon as I let off and hit the switch again, it fires up immediately.
Okay. That sounds to me like it's just not getting, you're not getting enough fuel. So if you cycle that key and it goes to that prime, it gets up there. Now, I was just
going to ask, have you done anything with the other modifications you did to the car? It may not matter for the question, but I'm just curious. Have you done anything else with the fuel injectors or the fuel pump or the fuel system to match the modifications that you've done? I know that LS motor is pretty adaptable, but have you done anything else in that arena?
Well, when I bought the car, it was already a heads cam car, so I haven't done anything. I've thought about changing the injectors, maybe upgrading the fuel pump, but like I said, the fuel pump will prime, but it will not start on that first key turn. But as soon as the starter hits on that second twist, it fires right up immediately.
It sounds to me like you do have a fuel issue where it's just not quite priming like it's supposed to. I'd put a fuel pressure gauge on it if you can get one, a mechanical one, and screw in there and see what you got when you first turn that key on. And I'll bet it's probably low. It could be in that 10 to 20 pound range or even less. And then when you cycle that key and hit it a second time, it fires up because it gets the fuel up there, which would mean you probably either get one of two things. Either you've got a leaky fuel pump, so it's bleeding back into the tank, or you've got a leaky injector and it's going in the engine. But if it fires up and runs smooth, it's usually not an injector because that would dump extra fuel.
It would act like it was flooded when it fired up.
Exactly. It's rough for a second.
Yeah. When it cranks, it's smooth as butter. It's a great running car. That's the only issue I have with it.
Yeah, I'm betting it's probably that fuel pump, and you know where that fuel pump's at, don't you?
Yes, I know. I have to do the infamous trap door.
Yeah.
Well, if you want to do that, yeah, there's a lot of people that do that. They'll cut themselves an access hole.
And there's no problem with that. You can actually buy some doors on the internet that'll give you a pattern that comes with them, and you lay that down, you mark it out, you cut it nice and smooth, sand the edge, add a little paint to it, and then you screw the door down. It even has little spots where it shows where to drill for the holes in the door. So that would look nice, and it would give you access. You know, I always like to just drop the axle down in the tank, but then I thought, why did I do that instead of cutting a door? Because what if I'm out on the road and I need to get to that pump? I'm not getting this up in the air to pull the axle out, so cut that hole in there. It'd be a good time.
But before you go get the saw going, though, make sure you get a pressure gauge, though, and check it and make sure that is the problem. This is something that can be checked. You don't have to do it on parts darts. You can just check it and find out before you do that. See if there's a drop.
Sounds great. Oh, and I have one more question if you guys don't mind. It's on a 2008 Audi A4 2-liter turbo. I've replaced the turbo, but it's like even a brand new Borg Warner high-dollar turbo. It's like there's oil blowing through going into the intake tubes, like going through the intercoolers, and it'll cause the engine to smoke some. So about every 2 weeks, it's my son's car, I have to drain a little bit of oil out of the intercoolers, and then it runs fine for about 2 weeks. And I just put a brand new turbo on it. Is there anything I can do to maybe fix that without having to replace another turbo?
If it's coming through that turbo, you're going to have to put another turbo on it. Unfortunately, it sounds like there was a manufacturing defect in that turbo, and it's allowing it to leak oil. Now,
and I replaced the PCV valve and everything.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Make sure that everything else is breathing correctly. And
I was just thinking, what was the problem before? But yeah, if the turbo's actually what is leaking, it coming in you're fine, but going out there's oil. Yeah, you got a problem with that with a brand new turbo. It shouldn't have any on that Audi.
It's like it's blowing it into the charge pipes and going through the intercoolers and everything.
Yeah, that's clean it out, and unfortunately, you'll have to get another turbo for it.
Unless another thing you could consider. I mean, how long ago was it you put the turbo on? We got to get to a break here quick, but how long ago was that?
About a month and a half.
So you should have gotten everything cleaned out of there by now if it had
Oh,
leaked
yeah.
a bunch of oil into there. That should all be long gone. Okay, I was just thinking of that,
Yes,
but make sure and remember to check the engine health too. Make sure that engine's healthy before you start hanging a bunch of expensive parts on it, because they can get some problems when they go fast like that.
All right.
Yeah, exactly. And you guys have a great day.
You too. Thanks for the call, Brad. 866-594-4150. This is Under the Hood. We're going to take a short break. Under the Hood show is brought to you by Sturdivants.
Find out how you can participate in the show by visiting underthehoodshow.com.
Welcome back to the Under the Hood show. I'm Russ Evans along with Shannon Nordstrom, 866-594-4150. That's how you get under the hood with the Motor Medics. We're going right back to the phone, and we're going to talk to Jonathan in New Hampshire with a 2004 Mustang GT. How you doing, Jonathan?
Doing okay, I guess. Well, never really a good day when the car ain't working, right?
No, that's why you're calling us.
Yeah. Yeah. But anyways, I actually called you guys last week about a misfire concern.
All right.
So
Yeah, I remember.
I actually went and, I got a full new set of coils and spark plugs, like nice, high-quality ones. Put them in. Ran great during the test drive. Way smoother, more power. Full 9 yards. I'm like, oh, great. It's all fixed. Next day, I went and then I kind of got on the power a little bit. The flashing light popped up again.
And you're like,
So,
darn it,
yeah.
darn it, darn it. This isn't what I was looking for. So exact same thing as before.
Yeah. Luckily, the light is kind of it's a weird temporary thing. So I went after that. I went and I was like, oh, maybe it's a fuel injector thing. So I went pulled off the fuel line, unplugged the fuel pump, and ran some carburetor cleaner through it to try and clean out the injectors. Still not running quite right. But so far I've just kind of been fading it, like keeping the RPMs low and stuff like that. And no code has popped up or check engine light, but I can definitely hear that it isn't running quite right. I've just been kind of trying to figure this out. So yeah.
But no check engine light, no codes. You can just feel it. Like it's rough.
Yeah, it runs rough. Like compared to that test drive, it was running real smooth, like way different. And now it's like it's running rough. Like it's stumbling a little bit. If I get on the power a little bit, like
right.
It almost feels like this is the stroke. It'll go a little bit, and then it stop and go. Almost like a little bit of hesitation.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's. I wonder if that thing's got a. There's many things it could be. We start checking fuel pressure. I'm looking at the data and the codes. Of course, you don't have any codes and things like that. But if you've got a mass airflow sensor that's not working properly, if it's dirty, if it's failing, that's one of the really the primary load indicator to the engine. It uses that to determine how much air is coming in, so it knows how much fuel to add in that. And if that thing is even dirty or compromised in any way, or you've got a leak in that intake between the mass airflow and the engine, what'll happen is when you stand on it, it doesn't think you're getting as much air flowing in, doesn't add as much fuel as it should, and then it causes that hesitation. So that's one possibility. Sometimes we have spares around, and we use that to check and compare. We're always comparing them. The guys in our shop are really good about. They'll look and try to memorize certain patterns and things. So if they see one, they can kind of tell if it's bad compared to, good one versus bad one, even though they're just slight differences in them.
I would go back and recheck my work on the coil installation and the boots and everything just to make sure one didn't get funky. I'm sure you've done that already, but I know I had my son's pickup one time. We were working on it, and it had been a big repairable project. I mean, like new frame, body put on, all rewired, everything all the looms had to be moved. And on that one there, we found a spark plug coil boot that had come loose, and it was misfiring and instant flashing check engine light. The truck powered down, because of that. Now, I guess I got to ask Russ a question vicariously through your question is, if he's had a flashing check engine light, shouldn't that be stored in the history when you look in with a scanner?
Well, that was before, but if you have a flashing light, it'll always store a code.
Yeah, because didn't you say it flashed again when you first started, when it started having the problem again after the coil installation?
Yes. So I read that code, and it was the same one as before, which was a cylinder 1 misfire and a startup misfire. But the weird thing is, it seems kind of more random than that, at least from the sound of the engine.
Gotcha.
Like it doesn't seem too regular. Also, a weird detail I noticed is that as the engine warms up, it gets worse.
So it warms up, it gets worse. If you've got a lifter that's hanging up on this thing, not working properly, and it's opening a valve more than it should, or keeping it open more than it should, as it warms up, it'll get worse because as things expand, if you've got a engine with valves you set by hand, that's really common when they're set too tight. As the engine warms up, they'll go from being okay to a slight leak as they warm up, and that'll give you exactly what you're getting now. These engines don't have a huge lifter issue, but we've seen a few of them. 4.6, 5.4, we put enough remanufactured engines in that we've seen problems with them with lifters in the past. Some of them that stick and don't collapse and automatically adjust like they should, and other ones that just collapse and make a ticking sound. So something to be looking for, and how we test that is to do a leak down test. We get the engine completely warm, we pull the plugs out of it, and we put our leak down tester in the cylinder, apply compressed air, and see what the leakage is of that cylinder. And if we see one that's leaking more than another by a significant amount, then what we're going to do is we're going to listen for the air. Is it coming out the exhaust pipe with the valves closed, meaning we've got an exhaust valve leak, or is it coming past the intake valve, or is it going through into the oil pan, meaning that we've got a piston ring and piston issue in the cylinder? So that's how we check for that leak. So I would verify mechanically that those things are good. The leak down test is easy to do.
Yeah, you're basically pressurizing the closed cylinder to see how much leakage is in that cylinder.
Does that help you out a little bit?
Yeah. Okay. I was just wondering if that is a problem. Would that be something that might be fixed by like one of those kits to like clean out all the carbon deposits, or would that be a pull the valve covers off and tweak some stuff type of deal? Because I can do both of those. I was just wondering which option is good, because I've done engine work before. It's just, yeah.
Well, yes and no. Yes, if it is carbon issue in the cylinder, you could use barium and B12 chem tool to clean that up. The injection cleaner, they make a pour-in, which is not necessarily pour-in. You use a tube to draw it into the engine through the vacuum. You could use that to clean up some carbon deposits. If that's what's causing the issue, is the carbon deposits. If it's not a carbon deposit, so let's say you find that you've got a leakage past a intake valve, you run the barium and B12 chem tool in there, and it makes a difference. You're good to go. You don't have to do anything. But if you run it, it changes nothing. Then we're gonna be looking at a mechanical issue. We're gonna get the valve cover off and look at it. It could be that. It could be mechanical up top. But if you see the valve is 100% closed and you still have leakage, it means bigger mechanical, and the head's got to come off the engine.
Yeah, and you could also do an oil system cleaner just to make sure, and try with those lifters if there happens to be, just some deposits in there. An oil system cleaner before an oil change, or just getting it all warmed up and putting in there. That's something you can do. But there again, if it's a mechanical problem bigger than that, you'll have a cleaner engine, but you might still have the problem.
Okay. I did hear a bit of a little bit of a ticking, a little bit here and there. So I wonder if it might be the tappets then.
That could indicate that too.
Well, appreciate you calling the show. I appreciate your desire to figure this out yourself and keep your budget in line. I know that's what everybody's trying to do, and that's what we're here to help, or if we can. So thanks for being a hoodie and listening in.
Thanks, Jonathan.
All right.
See ya.
Thank you very much, sir.
Oh, man. He does not want to pull the heads off of that car.
No, not really bad.
But hopefully it's something he can clean up. Fuel injection cleaner in there, the barium, and hopefully that'll do all he needs. Because
if he finds out the engine's healthy, he might want to enlist a good technician with the right tools to really analyze that thing. Maybe it's something else that he just hasn't caught.
That's it. We'll be right back after a short break. 866-594-4150. The Under the Hood Show is brought to you by Sturdivant's.
Make a radio appointment each week to hear the Nordstrom's Under the Hood Show.
Welcome back to the Under the Hood Show, 866-594-4150. I'm Russ Evans along with Shannon Nordstrom. The Under the Hood Show has a hoodie to give away.
We like to give away hoodies, and we like to sell them too. You can go to our website and buy a hoodie also, and a hat, and a
Christmas.
T-shirt. Yeah,
you
great
can
gift.
Get hooked up right now and get ready for Christmas coming up here. Mike Nelson, congratulations. You've won a hoodie from our friends over at Universal Technical Institute. You can find them at uti.edu. That's where I'd go right now if I was wanting to train to be a new automotive technician or CNC machinist, welder, marine mechanic,
Some great
aircraft
trades.
mechanic. Lots of stuff, lots of areas they are in around the country, too, where you can keep warm and enjoy the area, the scenery. Maybe you'll move there once you get trained, or maybe hopefully you'll come back like to our area if you're a local person and thinking about doing that. We'd love to have you back here as technicians.
Can always use more talent in this region, that's for sure. We can take it on.
That's for sure. We're going to jump right back into the phones, and we're going to talk to Adam. Adam in Pennsylvania with a 2016 Mazda CX-5. How you doing, Adam?
I'm doing very good, guys. Thank you. How are you guys doing today?
Well, not bad. What's going on with your Mazda?
Yeah, on the positive side cable on the battery and like tie down on the battery, it corrodes really bad. I'll clean all the corrosion off of it. I put the dielectric grease on it, and it's fine. But over a period of time, the stuff wears down, or maybe the heat causes to thin out, and it gets really corroded again. The car has never given me a problem, but every now and then I just got to clean all the corrosion off, and it's just on the positive terminal side, and everything that's connected to it gets really corroded. I was just curious what causes that.
Is this the same battery that's been doing this the whole time?
Nope, I'm on my third battery since I had the car, and I had it from brand new. It
All
seems
right.
to kill the battery about every 3.5 years.
What are you using for a battery in there? Lead acid battery, or is it an
Right now,
AGM?
it's a regular lead acid battery.
Okay. Well, the lead acid batteries, the terminals on them often you'll start to get a gap between the case and the terminal, and you'll get acid. The corrosion you're seeing just comes simply from the acid leaking out. And
Or vapors
Yep.
escaping out of the battery.
So once that liquid gets out, it causes the corrosion on the terminal, and then it'll kill your terminal. And some of those terminals on some of these cars are several $100s if they've got like an airbag disconnect in them and things like that. So it's nuts. You don't want to have to deal with that. And the manufacturers have got a lot better now about making a bolt-on piece first, and then the big high voltage expensive piece with the airbag disconnect.
So you can have something to service a lot easier.
But for me, my personal choice is an AGM battery, because the absorbed glass mat batteries don't have acid vapors there's no hydrogen in there to come out and leak around that terminal. They're sealed, so you don't have that problem, and they last longer in general. I've got some that are in vehicles that have been there, 8-9 years, so they may cost a little more, but that's what they're going to for many reasons. Because of today's electronics, there's so many loads placed on these cars that they'll help out with the car in many ways. Plus, if you've replaced this thing 3 times already, you put an AGM in it, you may never replace it again. It may last you another 8 to 10 years in that car, but you won't have the corrosion coming out there. And that's the biggest thing. If you go in someplace and you come out and the car won't start because it's all corroded, you don't want that. And
there's really nothing in the car that should cause corrosion on the battery. Even if you were having an excessive current draw or a peristaltic drain or that sort of thing, it still should not cause the corrosion to come. The corrosion comes from leakage of some sort, and whether it's vapor or worse than that, that's what causes it to come. And the ingredients are obviously there, or else that would not happen. I'm guessing you cleaned everything up real good with baking soda and water, and went through all that.
Yep, everything's been cleaned up real good, nice and clean. I load it all up with the grease, the de-electric grease there, and it lasts for quite some time. And for whatever reason, a couple months down the road, everything's starting to corrode again. And I thought maybe like the first battery maybe was leaking or whatever, but this is the third battery I put in it from brand new. It does it. So I just found it kind of just really strange. It never comes on the negative side, only ever on the positive side.
Yeah, and that's just with the type of battery you have. That's where the failure point is. A lot of them, it's the negative terminal that has the issue, but some batteries, it's the positive terminal. It just depends on the plate technology they use inside the battery and things like that. But yeah, you're going to need either an AGM battery in there or continue to try to put some grease on it. The grease just helps out for a while, but eventually the grease is permeable enough that the acid will come right through and leak out. So hope that helped you out a little bit there, Adam. Take care. All right, we're going to jump right back in, and we are going to talk to Rick with a 2002 Toyota Camry. How you doing, Rick?
Good morning, guys. Thank you for your show.
Thank you for listening.
We really appreciate it. Yeah, I've got my wife's car is a 2002 Camry with that you mentioned, and I flushed the brakes on it, and I've done it many times. It's worked fine, but after the last time I did it, shortly after it, the VBS track and ABS light came on.
Sure.
And so I took it in. I had it just diagnosed, and they said the ABS module was malfunctioning. And so I brought it home, and I just started checking it out, and realized it had been leaking on the bottom of the ABS module for quite a while. I didn't realize it, and there was grease built or dirt built up on the grease. Had been leaking so long, and so I replaced the ABS module and flushed it again because it got gets a little air in it when you put the module on, and the lights are still on.
Well, with that car, you'll need a scanner to clear the codes, and also to do an automated bleed is what they call of that ABS module, where the scan tool will open up inlet and outlet valves inside of that ABS module and charge the accumulator in it and help to bleed out the air. And you'll need to do that and open up. It's a simple procedure if you've got a scan tool that's capable of it, like a Snap-on, Modus, something like that, or the Toyota one. Most people don't have the Toyota. We've got an old one we don't even use anymore, but you can bleed it out. Now you can try sometimes just driving it if it's safe to drive, where you've got a good solid pedal and you can drive it a while and stop, then drive it, stop on some gravel a bunch of times, something that's really loose, so the ABS will kick in and activate it. If you can get it to activate a bunch of times and then go bleed the wheels one more time around, run it through like that again, bleed the wheels, it'll do that self-bleed, because the automatic bleed, that's what it's doing. It's running the ABS pump, cycling the valves. You just want to get the air out of there. There's a possibility that module's bad, but unlikely, because the Toyotas, other than a leak, they usually last forever. They don't fail electronically very often.
Rick, I got to ask you, Rick, on your desire to flush brake fluid. You say you've done it many times, not on this same car. You've done it on other vehicles, correct?
This car several times, and other vehicles, all of our vehicles.
What is your desire to do the brake flush so much? Because that is something that it just intrigues me.
Well, I mean, I'm old school, for one thing, but whenever I start to see the fluid start turning color, then I get it out of there. Probably every 20,000 miles.
Because
just to keep it clean, because I've heard with the older cars it didn't matter as much, but they said with the ABS modules like this that you need to keep it clean, because then they get gummed up and they go bad. That's
correct.
Exactly, and you can get problems when you bleed them too. No, that was a joke. That was a bad joke. But if it did kill that module, or if there's a problem with it, Very, very easy to find one of those on Car Dash Part wherever you might live. There's going to be a lot of those around in a recycled original equipment used one that would be available. And they also do make test strips, just like a pool test strip for a swimming pool, that you can check for acidity, and you can check for different things in that fluid before you have to. Even though the coloration can get a little different, it's something to pay attention to that you don't always have to do as often. Because when hoodies call in all the time, we ask, they'll say, "Hey, I was told I needed to flush my brake fluid at 5 years," and we're like, "I don't think so." There's definitely a maintenance to it, but it does not have to be overprescribed, I guess is the point I was trying to make. So,
Sure. And I wonder if I didn't, because manually, my wife and I actually do it. She'll pump the brakes and hold it, and I'll be under the car, and it's always worked fine for years. But could we have done it too much or too hard to and made that module start leaking?
No. That thing's made to hold up to standing on the brakes in an emergency stop and everything. So it's just failed. If it's in the case, it just failed.
I thought maybe we did something to it.
Russ, I figured it out.
Good.
He's using the brake bleeding as an excuse to get his wife in the garage.
There you go.
I think there's a ploy here.
I do that all the time.
Hey, honey, I need you to hold the pedal.
It's worked every time.
Yeah, I hear what's going on now. Okay, all right.
Thanks for the call, Rick. Take care.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. That's very helpful.
All right.
See ya.
Okay, take care.
All right, we're going to jump right back into the phone call soup. We're going to talk to Harvey, who's got an awesome Berkeley Classic, a 1967 Pontiac GTO. How you doing, Harvey?
Good this morning. Thank you. I'm in Minnesota. It's we're looking at 50 degrees. It's quite unusual for this time of the year.
Yeah, for sure.
Anyway, my daughter bought a 1967 GTO. It's got the Elderbrock aluminum heads on it. It's a two-door hardtop. It's got air conditioning. Was built in California, and trying to get a hold of somebody. She would like to resell it. She needs a little money to work on her house, and would like to get a few ideas on how do you evaluate a situation like that.
Well, the internet has become friend and foe in this arena. As you know, if you've listened to the show before, one of our partners is Berkeley Classics, and they do a collector car insurance.
Berkeley One Classics.
And I don't know if you insure with them now, or if you were considering getting a quote on insurance, you could contact Berkeley One and start that process to find out what it would cost to get classic car insurance. Part of that process is they're going to work with you on a valuation on the car. And they follow auctions around the country. They watch the trade magazines, internet magazines, whatever the medium might be, and they really watch that value. And you can, pay your premium based on the valuation you give it, which is based on the condition of the car.
Of course, they're not appraisers.
No, exactly.
But they know they know if you're way out of line high or way out of line low. They might say.
So I want to make sure and promote our partner there, because Russ and I both use them, and they give you very affordable rates for year-round coverage. It's a great program. But other than that, I would tell you that if you got yourself or someone else that is very internet savvy, and you put in your exact make and model and start searching and comparing, you're going to see the range. And if your car came out of California and it's original non-rusty car that was never, having to have panels cut into it or anything like that, and this thing is original, solid, nice, you've got a valuable piece. You got a valuable piece on your hands.
The engine and the build, the engine and the motor and the unit is original with the build unit. What they built it with. Yeah,
so, the motor is still original motor. That's right.
Correct.
Yep.
Right.
Numbers still match the original motor. Yep.
You got a valuable car there. Take a look around on the internet.
Yeah, I was going to say the one website. We got to wrap it up here, but take a look at Bring a Trailer as a place to sell it.
Bringatrailer.com.
Yeah, and that's a website. They also have a Facebook group that's similar, but just take a look around. You'll find some valuations, and you've got a good piece there for a California car, matching numbers. And thanks for calling the show here.
I appreciate it, and think you guys give a lot of good information.
Thank you.
I appreciate the call back. Thank you.
You bet. Take care. All right, we're going to take a short break. 866-594-4150. Under the Hood is brought to you by Sturdivant's.
Get your planner out right now and schedule your next radio appointment with the Motor Medics.
Welcome back to the Under the Hood Show. I'm Russ Evans along with Shannon Nordstrom, 866-594-4150. Thanks for joining us. 2024 Car of the Year, Toyota Prius.
It is. I hadn't seen that yet. I have not had not hit my radar yet.
Yeah, I was just looking at the Motor Trend Car of the Year for that car. I was really surprised looking at the Prius, how different it looked. It does not look like a hybrid car. It doesn't look like a Prius to me. If you had shown me that car 2 years ago without any badging at all on it and said, "What do you think this is?" I'd have no idea it was a Toyota.
Well, other than the
Prius.
strong architecture of the front A-pillars that give you that kind of that,
Well,
if you knew what an old Prius looked like, you can still feel that a little bit when you look at it. But the rest of the car,
The 24 has changed so much. It's more of a sports car than a four-door sports car than a Prius.
no, I know my sister has been looking to maybe buy one, and they're in very short supply of trying to find one around as she searched around. So I know she went to the Minneapolis Auto Show just to see one that they had sitting there because she hadn't touched one in the wild yet, and so that was I didn't know that was the car that won. Yeah, the way they enhanced the battery range and the power and then made it, to me, just a more appealing car aesthetically. The Prius has always been a winner, but now I think they've realized that we're going to cross this thing over into people that don't want to buy just funky looking cars that are hybrids.
Not electric, hybrid.
Yeah.
Gas engine. And as the dealers, several thousand dealers petitioned and said, look, you got to stop this mandate on electric cars, which is, it's just a joke. You can't force it. It has helped people learn more and develop more, but it's also brought those problems right to the top to show just how bad they are in battery range, disposal, mining, environment, all that stuff, the getting power to the cars. Hey, electric cars are cool because technology is cool. If you choose to own one yourself, that's like anything. If you choose that you're going to, that's like saying you can't drive a Chevy because you've got to drive a Ford, or you can't drive a Ford because you have to drive a Chevy. It's like, no, I want to be able to choose what I want. So you should have the choice to drive an electric car or drive a gas car or a hydrogen car or a soapbox derby car. It doesn't, you can be the Flintstones, right?
Yeah, let's pedal car it.
But they're actually actively in debates right now to try to reverse that mandate to change to something else. Now, it's great that they're always trying to move ahead, but like Chris said, a lot of times they set these dates and these dates keep getting pushed on. They don't tend to stick very well. But I do know a lot of people who have all electric cars, many of them with Teslas, and they love them for what they do with them. They don't have they don't make a lot of cross country trips with them. They can, and they have, but it's not their main thing. They just like driving them. They're quiet. They got a lot of power. They're fun to zip around town, and they don't have any problem charging them. Most of the time they're using, 10% of what the charge is of the car per day, and they charge it up. And even with the slowest charger, it takes them 4 or 5 hours to fully recharge.
So it's never an issue for them.
No, but if they took it on the road, I got one that says, "Oh no, heck no, there's no way I'm ever driving this car on a 4-hour road trip. It's just not going to happen." They're afraid of it. They're like, "No, I'm really nervous when I get on the road because I'm driving. I can look at my gas gauge and go, okay, things are exploding under my hood. I'm good. What's that electric thing? I've got an electric drill at home, and when it stops, it just goes, oh, what's the flashing light?" So that scares them.
I think I don't know if I told this on the after show, or maybe if I said it before, I'm repeating myself, but my wife and I were coming back from Minneapolis, and we were driving our internal combustion, not very fuel efficient Bronco. And
the ice machine.
And we were, not that I'm going to be proud of it, but that's what we were driving. And our gas gauge was getting low. We were tired. We wanted to be home. And we were about by Laverne. And so we looked at the gauge. We looked at the gas stations coming up ahead and said, we can make it. And we did. But ironically, as we're having this conversation for a mile or two, we pull out and we passed a Tesla Model 3. And so we both thought, what would the opposite side of this story be if we were in that Tesla Model 3 and we were realizing that we were just about to our destination, but yet we didn't know if our charge was enough because it was getting to the end. And you didn't know quite where you're going. I knew I could pull into one of 3 gas stations in our little town of Laverne, just in the western part of Minnesota there. And probably not quite as easy to pull in and say, okay, where am I going to plug in and so I can keep going down the road?
You might have to get a hotel so you can charge a little bit.
There'd be a different level of worry, was kind of the conversation Tammy and I were having as we thought about that. And she goes, I couldn't do it. Because she's one that runs around all the time with her gas. It's got to be full. And when she's done driving the car, she fills it again. Now, you could do the same thing with a charge vehicle where you'd have it in the garage and you charge it every time, so it's always full when you get into it. But that is probably the bigger challenge that people have found, is if it was their only vehicle and they had to go somewhere. Let's say grandma got real sick in St. Louis and you had to take off.
Got run over by a reindeer or something.
'Tis the season. But, that puts a different set of challenges on how that trip is going to look compared to if 3 of you get in a car and you're just going to switch drivers and go and get down to grandma. It puts a different. I told my neighbor the other day, he asked me about it. I said, I've driven electric cars. I love them. But I know I'd always, at this point, have to have an ICE vehicle sitting in there somewhere. So if I had to go somewhere in a hurry from a long distance because something came up, that I could jump in that and go without concern. And so that's some of the things people are trying to figure out. That's for sure. And, we look at that too. I mentioned before with our school district, being a school board president, we went ahead and utilized the clean bus grants and got 3 electric school buses for our district. and we are, well, I guess it'd be a couple months into using them now. And so far, so good. They're working very, very well. We're starting to get into our cool weather. Everything's working fine for what we purchased them for. But we still have propane buses and diesel buses that we keep for our longer runs, our activity runs, so that we don't have to have concern when we're taking a load of students on a longer journey. So there's a long ways to go yet, but yeah, let's not force this. Let's let the market consume it as it's ready. We're taking this the wrong way.
Under the Hood's going to take a break. This is the end of hour one. We'll be right back in a minute, and we'll see you on Under the Hood, 866-594-4150. The Under the Hood Show is brought to you by Sturdivant's. Hey, YouTube, we'll be right back in just a few minutes after this short local radio break. Thanks for watching.
You're listening to the Nordstrom's Under the Hood Show with the Motor Medics, Shannon Nordstrom and Russ the Super Tech Evans. Shannon is an ASE engine and parts specialist, and Russ is an ASE Master Certified technician with extensive factory drivability training. Join the Motor Medics for fun and free automotive advice with real-world solutions to everyday automotive problems. The Under the Hood Show is heard weekly on this and other great radio stations across the U.S. Find out how you can participate in the show by visiting underthehoodshow.com.
With Russ Evans, this is Shannon Nordstrom, thanking you for tuning in to the Nordstrom's Under the Hood Show. Have a great day, and remember, PTLA.
The opinions heard on this program, based on the many years of experience of Russ and Shannon, are offered for entertainment value only and as a guide to your repair needs. No claim to repair or cause is given or implied. Always consult with your own certified technician and follow all safety procedures before attempting any repair. To be a part of the show, call 866-594-4150. Under the Hood is produced by Prairie House Productions. All content is the property of Nordstrom's Automotive Incorporated and may not be used without our permission. Copyright Nordstrom's Automotive, Inc. Now, let's go under the hood with the Nordstrom's Motor Medics.
Hey, welcome to the Under the Hood Show. I'm Russ Evans along with Shannon Nordstrom.
Welcome, hoodies. Thanks for tuning in so we can help you tune up.
866-594-4150. We got some calls lined up, but we can get you in the queue as well. Give us a call. Wow, we are having stellar weather in our area of the country. And if you're in a warm area and you're saying, well, I'm sweltering anyways, we have been setting record highs lately going into winter. And here we are in
early December, and we're still saying maybe 67 degrees.
Yeah, and that for us is just a godsend because
it's 30 degrees above normal.
Last year the weather dropped on us. That hammer dropped at the end of October with snow and ice and cold, and it was freezing going in. And if you remember, depending on how you were traveling, we're going to talk a little bit about Christmas travels. Tell you what. We left here, and it was like 10 below zero to take our trip out of town. We headed down to Texas, and as we drove, it warmed up, and it was only about 2 below zero, and that maintained that way.
Call that warming up?
Yeah, all the way to the Oklahoma-Texas border. It was that temperature, and snow and ice and trucks upside down and trains that weren't moving. It was crazy how cold it got for a while there, and then it started warming up, and crazy because we had got all of a sudden the weather switched in Texas, and it went from we had snow on the ground when we were in Amarillo, and then it melted and hit the 60s, and it was a great rest of the trip. But boy, it was cold. And then sure enough, on the way back, froze and snow and cold and ice again, and it stayed that way until late in the season. We had an unseasonably cold and snowy time, but now it's warming up. So it does not mean that you should not think about looking at your car, even if it's a little warmer right now, because as we know, the weather can switch across the country, and the southern areas are going to be wetter and colder, snowier than normal. So if you get your car checked out and they find nothing, get your truck checked out, they find nothing, well, good for you. They didn't find anything, and you're safe. But if you neglect that and you decide not to check anything out, you're on the road and you lose a belt, you lose a tire, and you thought they were good, but they're not. Maybe the outside of the tire looks nice, but the inside's worn off because of an alignment issue, and you just didn't catch it because you didn't have it checked out. Come on. You don't want to ruin that trip or slow yourself down by a day if something happens. It's kind of hard to get parts out there sometimes, so you never know what's going to happen. Just get your car in, get that oil change done, and just have them check that thing out. The longer you wait, the more chance there is that you will not be able to get it in because the season is busy for everybody out there. We're going to jump right into the phone, and we're going to talk to Coates with a 94 Ranger with some kind of mysterious oil issue going on. How you doing, Coates?
All right. How's it going?
Pretty good. What do you got going on down there in Oklahoma?
Well, I got a 94 Ranger 3.0. I'm getting transmission fluid in my oil.
All right.
How do you know?
I got to ask how. So the oil is normally black or a lighter color tan when it's clean. What's the oil look like in the engine?
Well, it turns a reddish color, and I have no leaks in from my transmission or any transmission fluid on the ground whatsoever, and the transmission fluid levels keep dropping as the oil levels keep going up, and there's a red tint in my oil.
Good indication of where that's going then. If it's definitely...
There's no doubt in my mind that's happening. I just cannot figure out for the life of me. I didn't even know it was possible.
Well, there's only one way it's possible. If there's engine oil and transmission fluid mixed, being that you're getting the engine oil or the transmission fluid in the engine oil, it's got to be going through the cooler. You've got to have transmission lines into the radiator to cool that, and also an engine oil cooler in the radiator, because that's the only two places they cross. The transmission, you can unbolt it from the engine, and there's no mixture there. You've got the two cooler lines that run up to the radiator into a cooler there. Now, have you owned this truck its whole life?
No, I bought this off my nephew 5 years ago, 6 years ago.
Has
and
it
it's
always
been doing it ever since?
I was going to ask that. I was wondering if it's been doing it the whole time. I want you to follow those transmission cooler lines and see where they go. See if they run from the transmission up to the radiator and go into the radiator, and you have an engine oil cooler going in there as well.
So basically, you would have 6 fittings on your radiator. You'd have an inlet and outlet hose. You'd have a pressure and return transmission cooling line, and you'd have a pressure and return engine oil cooler line in that situation.
I'm wondering if somebody put an aftermarket cooler on and they did some mixing and matching. The other way you can completely eliminate the transmission from getting into the engine oil, you're in Oklahoma, so you'd be fine with an external cooler only. Take those 2 transmission lines, remove them from the radiator and cap the radiator off, and then you'll want to take those 2 lines from the transmission and connect them to an aftermarket transmission cooler, which would bolt up, in front of the radiator. You strap it on in front of the radiator and connect those lines to your transmission. That way your transmission is 100% isolated. It's got a good flow of coolant going through, the cooler is running good flow of transmission fluid through it. So you're guaranteed that'd be cool. There's no way it can mix if you've got those lines separate. It's like putting it in the bed of the truck.
Yeah, otherwise you're, for less than, I'm going to say $200, I could probably squish my thought less than $150. I might even be able to squish it to less than $125. You can probably buy a new radiator if it's a factory Ford radiator yet, and you could get a good aftermarket radiator. And there again, we're making a pretty strong assumption that when you look at that, you're going to see multiple lines going into that radiator, and that's where this is crossing at, unless we're just being really oblivious to something else in the design of that truck. But we've seen quite a few of them, and that's got to be where the problem's at if this is what's happening.
Does that help you out a little bit there?
Yeah. But what I don't understand is how it's getting mixed inside the radiator.
Yeah, we'd have to see that to know. If you've got usually the transmission cooler's on one side and the engine oil cooler's on the other side, and they're separated by coolant. So unless there is coolant getting mixed, you've also got fluid in your coolant, there's no way they can mix. So I'm wondering if somewhere along the lines there are lines that are mixed up and not running where they're supposed to run, because this is the first time we've ever had this come up.
Because in theory, Russ said you could isolate this with an external cooler. If you weren't going to drive it a long time, you could even take the cooler lines out of the trans and make a loop and just have the coolant go out and come right back in again, for just temporary.
Yeah, unless it's taking like a month for it to lose. If it drains down right away and your oil will also become more full.
Yep. How long of a time does it take, you say?
It takes about, probably 300 miles.
Okay.
On the vehicle, 300 miles of driving.
I'd put an external cooler on there, even if it's temporary, and see if it's still, if you've got any issue going on, because it's definitely not the transmission fluid getting in there if you have an external cooler.
Well, yeah, when he says his tranny level is going down and his engine oil is going up, we got to solve this mystery. You need to check those lines and get back to us.
All right. Thanks for the call. That we're putting that down as one of our definitely more intriguing ones. Take care. All right, we're going to take a short break. The Under the Hood Show is brought to you by Sturdivants.
Prepare to learn something. You're going under the hood.
You're Under the Hood with Russ and Shannon on Under the Hood.
We are under the hood.
866-594-4150. You know, I just realized we have been on the air now for about an hour and 20 minutes, and we haven't even mentioned that Chris isn't here.
We didn't. What is going on here? Sometimes we make a really big deal about it, but
I know.
Why is he gone, Russ?
He is at the Children's Miracle Network Radiothon, which is an annual event, and it's kind of his near and dear to his heart thing. If you were to look inside of Chris's soul, you would see the Children's Miracle Network. He just loves helping out those kids. He actually loved it so much, we found a way to put a link on the front page of underthehoodshow.com about a year ago, thanks to one of our listeners, by the way. And you can actually go there, click on it, and donate right to the Children's Miracle Network, to Chris, right? Not to Chris, but to what Chris is doing right now today. He'd love to see that. So
they have raised hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions. I can't remember what the number was since they've been doing Radiothon. It's millions, I believe.
Yeah, I think it is up in there.
And getting to meet the families, getting to meet some kids that are going through things that none of us would want to have to accept as normal in our family or your family. But this is what people are working with. And he's there, and Chris and Doc, and the whole Midwest Communications team to make it a big day. And they put themselves out for this and really go to town for that big 24-hour radiothon. And it's a good opportunity for them to make a difference. They make a big difference.
And we know we can say anything we want about Chris right now because he's not listening. He's definitely not listening, and he'll probably catch this like a month from now when he goes back and he's listening to podcasts, like maybe at Christmas, and he's like, "You guys said what about me?" Yeah,
We said he's special.
Very special in a good kind of way. We love Chris. Chris has been amazing for this show. I just, you think about it. Chris has been with this show now like 20 years. Isn't that crazy?
Has it been that long?
I think it's getting pretty.
I don't know. I always get my
close.
time estimates.
We're headed into 2024, so that would have been 2004. So he's pretty.
Well, no, it would have been after that, because when we came over 05,
3.
Wasn't it 5?
3.
Was it 3?
Yeah.
Oh.
So it
because
was
Dave Holly was first.
Yeah, so it was a couple years going on in there. So Chris has been a staple. The way Under the Hood exists now, the formality of what we do. It's it's good. So I don't want to forget that we also take calls on the show. So we're going to jump right in. We're going to talk to John in Minnesota with an 06 Chevy Express. Tell us about your Chevy Express, John.
Well, it's a 6-liter motor. It's got about 130,000 miles. Worked fine until won't start. Turn the switch, turn it on, and the lights dim out on the dash, and it won't start. It doesn't click. It doesn't do anything.
No.
I got a new battery, new battery and a starter. So that's not it, but it's been sitting for 6 months. So I'd like to get it at least starting,
For sure. What does your dash say? Do you have a orange light that looks like a lock on the dash, or do you have a light that says security that is on when that key is in that run position?
I couldn't tell you. I spent a lot of time in that van, but
sure. That is one thing we want you to look at. Turn the key to the start position to try to start it. Of course, it's not going to do anything. And then just let go of the key. Leave it in the run position. And then watch the dash. If it's got the driver's information center in it, it will have a flashing light that says security if the security is active. If it does not have that, it'll have a lock symbol up there that looks like a padlock that's orange, yellow, amber colored, and it will be either on solid or flashing. If either one of those things exists, this vehicle's in security mode and it will not allow it to start. It will not crank and supply fuel until that light's off. And what can happen is that either the key, the lock cylinder with the security, the ring inside of there that reads everything in the ignition lock cylinder, either that has failed or something else has failed in the system, not allowing it to start with that security. One thing you can try, if it's been sitting for a while and it was dead, you'll have to look on YouTube to see the procedure so you can kind of watch it being done. But there is a simpler way to reset the security, at least temporarily, until you may replace that lock cylinder. And it kind of goes something like this. You put the key in, you turn it to the crank position to try to start it. Nothing happens. You just let go of the key and you wait about 11 to 12 minutes until that flashing light on the dash, security light, or the security message goes off. Then you turn the key off for 30 seconds. Then you try to crank it again. And then you let go of the key, of course, like you did before, and you wait again until those lights go off. And you repeat this procedure 3 or 4 times. And then finally, if it relearns, it's going to crank up and start and run. And it's good, but likely you'll need to put a new lock cylinder in it because there was a failure in there. And it could come from dirt, just with age. If you let one sit a little bit, or even not.
So it's possible that it would be in the ignition switch.
Right, in the lock cylinder, the part that the key goes into, not the electrical part, but the actual cylinder that the key's in. It's got a chip built into it, a transponder, and then that drives with the way the key is inserted in that ignition, whether it's got the right key or not. But it could definitely be that if you have that flashing security light or a security message.
Now, if you don't, and I just got to ask, because Russ went down that vein of the security, when you try to start it, does it do any sort of an old school, like or you said are dash lights dimming like there's electrical trying to do something? Have you ever done
It just blanks out. There's no power. The lights go out of the dash. It goes blank.
That's normally what it will do in security mode. They'll just go toop, gone.
Yeah, so check that. But otherwise, you could worst case
But then
scenario
it comes right back.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
worst case
the light.
scenario though is that you've had something happen to your engine.
I doubt it.
I
It would
doubt
click.
it.
Yeah,
I
it would
think
click.
you'd hear or feel something old school, or at least be trying to hit the starter. So
yeah, there's nothing wrong. It's a baby its whole life. So
this sounds like it's not so bad.
Check that security. Thanks for the call, John.
it's very strange. Thanks. Bye.
Yeah, take care. All right, we're going to jump right back in, and we're going to go to Tony in Georgia with an 07 Tahoe who's got a follow-up for us. Tell us about it.
Well, a couple weeks ago, I talked to you guys about some evap issues and possibly going to change the ECM. And so the question, the info that I didn't get last time was I was wondering what is the proper way to go about getting an ECM? There's these places online, Flagship One, different things that promise that they can mail you a plug and play one. But it has very mixed reviews about that. So it kind of is related to the last call. Is I'm worried that I'm going to get it, and then the security is not going to let me in. Now my scan tool does have some key relearning and stuff, but I'm just wondering, like, what is the proper way to go about programming that? Can an independent shop do that? Do I have to go to the dealer? Where do I have to buy the ECM from? Just all these questions. I know it's been mentioned before, but wanted to ask about this specific, 07 Tahoe 5.3.
With that 07 computer, you're not going to be able to relearn the security yourself. You're going to have to get that programmed. So if you order something online, you get it to you, and it's a brand new one, and they say it's plug and play. Well, it's programmed, yes, but the security is not. So you've got to go in. Let's say the cost at a dealership or an independent is $150 to program it. Well, that's programming and relearning security. There's not a separate charge there. So you might as well buy one that is not programmed, and as little failure that we see in an 07 Tahoe computer, I would feel 100% confident in purchasing a used computer from car-part.com. Buy that thing, have it shipped to you. They're cheap. I know they're going to be under $200, but
I would think
cheap.
under 100 possibly.
Yeah. I was shooting high depending on where you're at, but yeah, they're pretty cheap. Just get that, plug it in, and have it programmed at an independent shop. And most independent shops these days, if they're into any kind of electronics, are going to have the ability to program that. They purchase it one at a time and program it. So that should get you fixed up.
So I would buy it and then drive it with the old one to the shop.
Yep.
And then,
put it in yourself
right
there in the parking lot, and then they'll come out and program it.
Okay. And does it have to have like a certain software to do that? Also, could
They
my
do.
locksmith do that?
Yes, maybe. They usually just do security, not programming. So I would contact an independent shop and say, can you program a used PCM I have in an 07 Tahoe? That's the answer you're gonna want.
And they're going to give you a disclaimer to say, hey, if we don't buy the part, of course, you're still going to pay us whether it works or not. But
it should, though.
But if you call them and they're willing to do that, that's the right shop to talk to. And if you're not sure which one that is, check with your local parts store that delivers the big box stores, and they'll know who the independents are that do that kind of thing.
All right. Thanks for the call, Tony. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
You bet.
All right.
Take care.
Bye.
All right, we're going to take a short break. The Under the Hood Show is brought to you by Sturdivants.
Car feeling ill? Don't want to spread it to your wallet? Call the Motor Medics now for free advice.
866-594-4150. That's Under the Hood. That's our number. I'm Russ Evans along with Shannon Nordstrom. No Chris today, but that's all right. He'll be back soon. Yeah. Very soon. We're going to jump right to the phone because I got calls lined up here, and they're going to start knocking on my door if I don't get to this right away.
Let's get to it.
Producer Doug. Here we go. So we're going to talk to Justin. He's got a question about warranty. What is that question, Justin?
Just wondering, to be honest with you, if you've done any dealings with like Car Shield or Endurance car warranties, and if so, what the experience was with those.
We've got a lot of experience in this arena from three different angles. Three different angles would be this. Russ and his team repair cars under warranty company warranties.
I submit the claims.
Our company, Nordstrom's, has sold parts directly to warranty company that are servicing warranty contracts. And we've dealt with warranty companies that have wanted to and have advertised as partners of the Under the Hood show. So we've kind of seen all sides of the fence, and probably the deepest dive I got into personally was selling parts and having a representative of a group of mine that would contact these companies and learn more about them. We learned a lot about how many there were, who actually owned them, the ones that had been there for the long time, the ones that would pop up under a certain legal entity, and then they would collect a bunch of premiums and then go away. The ones that historically were great payers, had great systems, long-running legacy companies, and the different names that they would sell their products under. It is a pretty crazy world when you learned more about it. But here's what I'll tell people from my experience is this. When someone is trying to sell you one of those policies, they're typically quite expensive, either to your monthly premium when you're sitting down in the finance office, or to just a purchase if somebody's trying to sell one to you direct. And the comedians and everybody else in the world can easily drop a joke any day, and everybody will relate to it when they talk about a rogue phone call that you get that they're trying to sell you a car warranty. That's not the type of product. I don't think that many people need a car warranty that bad that they need to be robocalling people. There is a place for it. And so here's what Russ has told people, and I've told people about warranties in general. If you're going to buy a vehicle that is under warranty and you plan on rotating that vehicle out either by lease or by purchase within the warranty period of the factory warranty, the aftermarket warranty is unnecessary. It's wasted money. This is our strong opinion on that piece of it. Now, if you're going to own that vehicle outside of the warranty period from the factory, now you've got something to think about. So we're going from, I really need it, to now I got something to think about. Well, what you might consider at that point, if the premium was X dollars, you might consider, you know what? I'm going to take $50 a month, $75 a month, $100 a month that I would have paid for that warranty, and I'm going to be disciplined, and I'm going to rat hole that over into a bank account somewhere and hide it and build up a war chest for repair. And so I have my own war chest for repair, and before you know it, you have $3,000 in there over a couple of years. And that's maybe, or you got $1,500 in there, whatever it might happen to be. Now that is your own warranty company. And guess what? If the car doesn't break, you take that money and you use it as a down payment when you get ready to trade or do your next car. That can be your car fund, or you just leave it there for your emergency repair fund. That doesn't work for everybody because the budgets might be tight enough where you don't have that wiggle room to put that money somewhere. And you also probably don't have the wiggle room to do a $5,000 repair or a $7,000 repair if a motor blows up. So you need to consider those things. That's the bigger picture. The other thing people might say is, you know what? If I did have my motor blow up, I know I could go get a short-term loan. I've got good credit. I could go to the bank and I could get a short-term loan for the repair, and I could pay it off over some time, and I could do it that way. Okay, that's kind of taking it another thought. Another thought process, though, is what does that warranty cover? You need to know when you're going to buy that warranty exactly what that warranty covers. And then you need to know who in your market does the repairs for that and what's their experience about doing repairs and what they'll pay for and what they won't. Because there's a number of them that are, I guess Russ gets into that side of things, that are completely difficult to deal with on getting payments and what they pay for and what they don't want to pay for, which is they don't want to pay for anything.
No.
When it gets down to it.
Not unless they have to.
Right.
But there are some good ones out there that have been good. We've been very happy with them. The one is, I think they've got 3 companies, but the one that comes to mind is Route 66. We have never had a problem with them paying or covering what is in the agreement. I have had problems with multiple companies where they won't pay for something that is listed in the agreement because of some bogus thing they came up with and said, well, you didn't change the air in your tires once every 3 months, so we're not going to cover your brakes. What? But I've got a leaking brake caliper. No, that's not covered. You didn't rotate your air. They're just not that stupid, but close. There are things where they say, like for instance, a head gasket goes out and they say, well, you overheated your engine and that's why the head gasket went out. No, it overheated because the head gasket went out. Like, no, that's just our policy. So you abused it. And there's things like that. So you've really got to look at the details. But like Shannon said, look and see if it's more affordable for you to save that money to go towards repairs that you may never need versus the warranty. But then, of course, we got the other hand, play the devil's advocate here. But I've had people come in and say, I've sucked $8,000 out of this warranty company that I paid $2,800 for. So I feel pretty good. I actually just had a Volkswagen Passat the other day, and this guy was jumping for joy because he had already spent, I think, $6,000 on warranty repairs. And then the engine blew up and he needed an engine. And it was going to cost like $12,000, $11,000 for a used engine installed. And the warranty company just said, I filed the claim with them. And they said, look, this is all that's left. We're going to give him $6,000 to go towards this repair. And then we're done. He needs to sign the release saying,
so there must have been a
no
cap.
more.
There must have been a cap on the warranty.
But they paid that much, so he was covered. And that was a Route 66 company.
Yep.
So there are some good ones and there are some bad ones. Now, these companies, they're not making the money off you buying a warranty. They take your money, it comes in, they invest it, it's in the stock market, it's in bonds and things. They're using your money to make them money. So it's not like if we take in $1 and we pay out $5, we're going to go bankrupt. Some of the poor companies probably are that have gone bankrupt, but the good ones, they are covered. So look for a warranty company, do your due diligence and research, and find one that is very diversified under a big umbrella of companies.
And they've been established for a long time.
They've got the money, they've got the backing, they've got the stocks and bonds to cover it, and they're going to be there. They're doing a good job, and they can make a good business out of a warranty.
Because you've seen this move into the home market now, where they're doing home warranties for water heaters and this sort of thing. But just make sure, the last thing for me is that you know what you're getting covered for. If it says bumper to bumper, you do need to take the time to look at the contract to see what that actually covers and what's excluded. Make sure you understand what you're buying, because I've talked to so many people that they just know, I got a warranty, and then they find out it doesn't cover the $1,500 ABS unit.
Right.
That sort of stuff. So does that help you?
I was wondering how long, with those you've dealt with, how long does it take normally for a repair to get completed?
Usually, if someone walked into my shop today and they had a good warranty company, I look at the car, call the warranty company. Within a few minutes, they've got it authorized to get the inspection done and the tear down. We get that done, and it's been more on most of the ones I've done. It's been more on how long the shop is going to take to get it done and what their schedule is. versus what the warranty company is going to do. Warranty companies usually right on it. If it's a good company, I call them. It needs a head gasket. Okay, go ahead and tear it down. Let's inspect it. I do that. I call them back and say, that's what it is. They say, okay, you're approved for this much. This is the customer's deductible. Go ahead and fix it. And that's how that works if it's a good company.
Okay.
Takes longer for the shop.
Thank you very much.
You bet. Take care. Appreciate it. All right, we're going to jump right over to Tony, and we're going to talk to Tony in Michigan with a 2015 Audi A6. Hello, Tony.
Hello.
How's your Audi?
Well, right now it's sitting in the garage, but a little history. I don't know what kind of history you have with the Audis, but I started having a misfire on one of my cylinders. I took in my mechanic. He took the plugs out, showed me three plugs were pretty decent. One plug he showed me was really bad, so he changed the plug. I drove it for about a month, started misfiring again. I took it back to him, and he said, well, there's gas on your plug. He said, I'm thinking you probably need O-rings replaced. He said, but that's not something that he really wanted to work on. He isn't really an Audi mechanic. I use him for other things. Anyway, so I took it to a place, and they said, well, it's not the plugs, it's the fuel injectors. So they replaced the fuel injectors. I said, okay, fine, if that's what you say. But I told him exactly what my mechanic told me to tell him. And so then I get about a mile down the road after taking it from them and started misfiring again. So I called them, and they said, well, that's what the diagnostics showed up as. And then they didn't want anything to do with it after that. So I took it to an Audi dealership, and they told me that had the wrong plugs were in it. They said, you need to replace your plug. And I told them again the history, and they said, no, it's like, that's what the diagnostic says. And the mechanic pulled the plugs out, and you got the wrong plugs in. I said, okay, that's fine. Then go ahead and replace the plugs. They replaced the plugs, drove it for a week, started misfiring again. And of course, I talked to them, and they said, well, the funny thing about that is I took it to my brother, he's not a mechanic, but he's very mechanically inclined. We took the plugs out, and they were the exact same plugs that were in there before. So the dealership either didn't replace the plugs or put the same exact plugs that I had in there before, even after telling me that they were the wrong plugs.
Yeah, there is a problem with plugs on those cars. We've run into this where you've got to look at them real close, because in 1 year they can take two different designs based on the coil that's in there. It doesn't affect, though, that carbon buildup and what you've got going on in the engine.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, do you have one more piece to the story? I sensed, or no?
Not really. I'm really looking more for some advice as to if you're familiar with these cars doing that.
We are.
Really, like if you think that maybe it is the O-ring.
Yeah, piston rings. We've had this.
We're concerned about inside the motor, not outside.
We have worked on so many of these and sold so many as used engines, and just had this dealing with these cars. It's extremely common when they start burning oil and you get one cylinder and a misfire. It's definitely, it's an oil burning issue in rings.
Yeah, is it something you don't want to hear? But don't forget that as an idea before you start spending more money on the outside. Just make sure somebody checks the health on the inside.
Yeah, and it does. It does burn a little oil about every 2 months. It needs about a quart. And I talked to my mechanic and some other people, and they actually told me that that's kind of normal with those cars.
No, it shouldn't be.
In that year.
No.
When we see them burning oil like that, it usually ends up on one or more of the cylinders, like what yours having, and it starts to misfire.
Investigate that. Yep. Check it out a little further.
We got to take a break. We'll be right back on the Under the Hood Show. Take care, Tony.
All right, thanks.
All right, we're going to take a break. We'll be right back.
Right now and schedule your next radio appointment with the Motor Medics.
Welcome back, everybody. Let's wrap this thing up. It's Christmas. You got to wrap that package up, right?
It is. Make sure your car's ready. Make sure your presents are ready. It's Christmas. Get ready.
Well, let's jump right in on the phone. Let's talk to James. James, how you doing?
All right, sir. It's an honor to speak to you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
You are my favorite talk show and car show. It's amazing how you guys in North Dakota are smarter than the guys that are based in Detroit. But you do a tremendous job, and I appreciate your service that you offer.
Well, thank you.
I'm calling about my 2023 Subaru, which I just got, which unfortunately I had to replace another Subaru that was lost in an accident. And but I came out of it okay. Anyway, the one of the usual pitches, and my model is a Forester. One of the usual pitches, if you buy another car, do you think you're done? You got the taxes all figured in and everything, and then they said, oh, by the way, we have some extra protection you can get. And so they did the pitch on fabric protection I'm not interested in, or other things they do. But there's two things that kind of intrigued me, but I wanted to get your advice on that.
Okay.
The first was rust protection. Now, I'm from Southwest Michigan, about 30 miles east of Lake Michigan.
Gotcha.
So we get a lot of what's called lake effect snow. Now, I know in your area of the country, it's probably balmy and you never get any snow, do you, down up in South Dakota?
Yeah, right. I'm actually from the Detroit area there, so that's why you can't find a good show there. It's all moved to South Dakota. Sorry, but you're listening now. Yeah, we're familiar with that snow and the rust, the rust belt of.
That's exactly the point.
So I'm trying to make my comments brief so I don't take up too much of your time. But they had two types of rust protection. One was a chemical-based spray they put in through existing ports. They don't drill any holes like they used to do. You remember?
Oh yeah,
rust proof.
Z-Bart
and Z-Bart. I think they're based in Detroit too.
They were, yeah.
But this is kind of it's more of a regional operation, and they fog your inside of the car. But they had another. They get between the door panels to what they call existing holes. But the other thing they had as an option was an electronic module, and it's actually this company is based out of Canada, out of Toronto, and they're called Final Coat.
No. That's
okay.
It's they use a cathodic rectifier, and while those are amazing,
can you say that again?
Cathodic rectifiers.
Sounds like something that would go in your rear end at the doctor if you were sick.
Well, one more add to the list there, Shannon, of things that I put on that text to just impress Chris and have fun with him, of things that were made in Longview, Texas. These companies that are there.
Cathodic rectifier.
There is a company there.
Go get the cathodic rectifier. He's in deep trouble.
That make the so all the fuel tanks underground that are metal have to have these systems on them. The plastic ones don't, but the metal ones do. And you used to see the box on the wall that was powered up to do this. Well, the thing is, if you have dirt that they're buried in that you can ground to, and the tank, this rust protection works very well. In a car, not so much. I've seen more cars come into our shop completely eaten out with rust and said, oh, look, this device worked well. And it's still lit up under the hood. The LEDs lit up. And the thing is just like, was this a rust magnet? Yeah. So I wouldn't suggest using one of those. I don't know.
You
about
don't have
this
a high
company.
degree of confidence, it sounds like.
The company you found, I don't know about, but I can tell you this one didn't work.
So they're offering that as an option in the F&I office when you're finishing up the deal on the car?
Yeah. And what's funny is the thing was not cheap. This little module ran about $500.
Oh, yeah, they're expensive.
And although I found them on Amazon for as low as $140, not the same brand, of course.
Here's what I'm going to say. We do have to wrap it up here because we want to get another caller in here too. But that money spent there.
Yeah, pass on that.
You can buy a lot of car washes.
We have a partner, NHOU. It's NHOilundercoating.com. Go to their website. They have mobile installers, and they're looking for more of them. It's a great product. They put an undercoating on the car. Pass on what they're going to charge you because this is going to be a better deal. Have them spray this on the car. They'll tell you all about it. They'll work with you personally and tell you what goes into it.
Similar to what they use on a lot of the state trucks and things like that on the frames.
On salt trucks, and it protects them from the salt and corrosion. Plus, they have
NHOU.com?
NHOilundercoating.com. NHOil.com. It's NHOU. It's New Hampshire Oil Undercoating is their full name there. But
you Google New Hampshire Oil Undercoating, you'll find it.
Yep, and that's a great product. And then as far as your fabric guard goes for your seats, I'm a believer in the spray can of the Scotch Guard. It works great to keep future stains out when you got a brand new car or one that's very clean. So hope that helps you out.
Yeah. One quick question: does this company make some paint sealant because they're pushing a paint sealant?
They do. They do not. The ceramic sealants work good, but the undercoating is the more important one for this car.
Okay,
all right.
Thank you. You
Thanks,
saved me
James.
a bunch of money. I really appreciate it, and you have a wonderful, wonderful show.
You
Please
too.
keep it up. I want you to go to daily. I want you 5 days. Once is not enough.
All right. Take care.
Thank you. You too. Thank you, gentlemen.
All right, this has been another episode of the Under the Hood Show. We hope you enjoyed it. Chris will be back again next week. Take care, everybody. We'll see you under the hood. All right, all you YouTubers, how you doing? Look at that. We jumped out early. That's the inexperience of Russ versus Chris, and is amazing. Let's do it to the last minute while he tells us all to shut up.
We just wanted to hear our beat music there a little bit longer.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, do you like that?
Yeah, Doug was jamming in the studio.
Chris self-composed this himself. I just push buttons all day long like this one.
Get your planner out right now and prepare to learn something. You're going car feeling ill?
Yes, it is.
Don't want to make a radio appointment.
Oh, I love that. That radio appointment one was the fun. That was not us. A gentleman, Chuck Poppin, came up with that. Chuck, if you're listening, he says, you know what? Just make a radio appointment every week to tune in and tune up with the Motor Medics. I like that one. It's a good one. Oh, hey, look at that. We got a call. We're going to take it right now. We're going to jump in and we're going to talk to Josh in Minnesota with an 03 Honda CRV. How you doing, Josh?
Not too bad. And yourself?
I'm good now that I got all the buttons pushed the right way here.
Yeah, Russ is running solo today. He's like, I don't know, all the references if somebody's doing too many things at once, but he was going at it, doing the calls, answering, the button pushing, and then plus the technical assistance.
Yeah, don't forget producer Doug out there. He does the dial and drop.
So what's up with the CRV?
Yeah, no. First of all, thanks for taking the call. Appreciate the radio show. Yeah, the question with the CRV is I recently had all the CV shafts replaced, and originally leading up to that, I thought I had some kind of clicking noise coming from the front left, and the rubber boot by the wheel there was ripped. So that's why I replaced the CV shafts. The rear ones I replaced because there was a seal that was leaking out of the rear diff, so I just had them replaced at the same time. But now, that was about 2 months ago, the clicking noise on the front left never really went away, and I'm kind of not sure what to look for that might be causing that.
So it clicked before the CV shaft, and it clicked after the CV shaft.
Right. It doesn't really seem like that really changed anything.
I'm wondering if it's not something going on with the brake rotor where you got a little bit of rust on the edge of the brake rotor or something, and it's clicking as it goes around. Because that's what we're hoping for. We don't want like a transmission or differential issue.
There's only so many rotating pieces there.
Right. And we've had some where the brake rotor, as it goes around, there'll be a rust lip on the edge of it, and they're not really warped, but they're not 100% true in most cases. So it'll as it's going. Also, make sure nothing's touching in rotating area like a brake hose or a ABS sensor wire or shield or anything like that. Even a shield that's too close to the rotor can touch it at a certain spot, and the rust will give it a click as it goes around.
So the click that you're getting, when does it happen? How loud is it? Does it matter if you're turning, not turning? Give us some of that kind of stuff. I'm sure you've thought about it. If you've already spent this much money, you're thinking about it a lot.
Yep. Yeah, no, I notice in most if I'm driving slow speeds, that's when I have the window down and I'm listening to it. It doesn't seem to matter if you're turning. I did jack it up, had the vehicle off, jacked that wheel up on the front end and just turned it by hand, and you can still kind of hear that click, click, click. Kind of looked to see if the brakes were replaced about 2 years ago. I did the rotors and the calipers and pads and the whole works. And this started probably this last year, so that I don't think it's anything brake related. I've kind of looked.
Okay, well, if they look clean, that's anything. Yeah. What about wheel bearings? Have you thought about that a little bit or looked into those at all?
I haven't. No, is that something? Because those usually whine, but do they sometimes click too, or?
Well, sometimes you can get just the way the bearing wears that it'll be a particular spot on the race where it'll click, or the needles will kind of bunch and drop inside the bearing if they're getting wear on them. That's something else to consider up there before you get deeper into things. Is if it sounds the same with the new CV axles as it did with the old one, that's your next affordable point without getting inside of the transmission.
Sure. And if the transmission was causing something, what would be like your telltale sign? Because as far as just the drivability of the vehicle, shifting, handling. It seems like it shifts well.
It would be, to me, unusual with that kind of a vehicle, but it'd be more like a bushing or a bearing on the outer side of the carrier in the transaxle piece of the transmission, where the transmission itself would still work just fine.
At least when you turn it and it's on the ground, you can hear it clicking, so you can get a stethoscope or a piece of rubber hose and put it to your ear and put it up close to the thing you're trying to hear and turn it and hear that click, and you can isolate it and narrow it down to exactly what point it's coming from.
Yeah.
I use that hose trick all the time. Just don't get it near a vacuum line. That's bad.
Suck your ear right out.
It would.
But that is, if you, that's a good point, Russ. If you can replicate it on a jack stand, well, you're halfway home on trying to get closer to isolating it. But I mean, it sure seems to me that you've got a good chance that you should be looking into that spindle knuckle wheel bearing on that one, because that's a pressed-in bearing on that, probably, Russ, or is that a bolt-on on an 03 CRV?
03 should be. I think that's a bolt-on on that one. There's a switch in there. We've done a lot of pressed-in. We've done a lot of bolt-ins. All sorts of.
One thing we've found lately, with not only for Russ and his team at the service center, but just for us selling things, that for years we've sold recycled original equipment used knuckles.
Yeah, as a whole
unit, with the steering knuckle and the hub when they're pressed.
Or axles.
Yeah, people want to buy that whole piece because they don't have a press. They don't want to mess with it. They find another one that's got lower mileage and they'll just buy the whole thing and put it on there. Now partners of ours like Dorman have come out with, for the models that they know are popular, they're doing a complete ready-to-go steering knuckle with the bearing already pressed in it. You're seeing more of that available.
As a pro shop, we use AutoZone for a lot of stuff, and they turned us on to the Dorman pre-pressed axle assemblies. They're like, that's one of the benefits we get of being a shop that's using them. You know, whether you're a tech or the shop owner or manager, a lot of times they're the first to get introduced to this stuff. And I didn't know they had that. And I call them up and like, yeah, I need a bearing for let's say a Honda CRV or the Subarus. And they're like, you sure you just want the bearing? Well, yeah, why? I need a bearing. Well, you know, we've got pre-pressed axle assemblies now. And I'm like, send me one of them. As you know, whether I'm at the shop or you can do it.
Are those pretty reasonable then?
Yeah, they're of course they're more money than just a part. But if you're buying an axle and you buy a bearing, it's the same as buying the two parts. Plus, you're buying them as a bundle, so you're going to save money. But anytime you can get something pre-pressed, it's done
time.
Yeah, it saves you time, but it's also done in the factory with a machine that's set up only for doing that operation. Whereas if you're taking it down to the local shop, or if I'm doing it and I'm trying to press it, I've got most of the tools, but sometimes it's like, I've ruined a couple bearings, and of course I got to sell this stuff, so I have to get another one, and then I lose money. So it's better for me just to buy like an AutoZone complete assembly, ready to go, and not have to worry about it.
Sure. I got a couple other questions with that, if that.
Bring them on.
That's fine. It seems to me that 03 CRV might be a pressed-in one, but it's right there and somewhere in that era that they started switching them. So
that does sound right, looking at it.
Thinks.
I've seen press ones before, and then I've seen like the bolt-on ones.
If it's got 3 bolts or 4, it's pressed in. If it's got 2, then what's that mean, Shannon? Somebody left a bolt out.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say, this is a trick question.
Yeah, it was.
Yep.
What? Go on. Bring it on.
Yeah. The other quick questions would be with the spark plugs and coils on that thing. It's got 194 on that. Is that something that just should be done? I don't have no engine codes for that. I just wondering if that's something I should be doing, or not too much to worry about.
With that many, yes. And 2 things you need to do. So first off, go buy yourself a set of spark plugs and ignition coils. On that one, I would suggest the Motorrad ignition coils for that. They've got a lot of engine management solutions, and that is one of them. So get your coils. As far as spark plug goes, I would use the NGK spark plugs in that. Great on a foreign car like that, on the Japanese cars. Now, when you got your parts in hand, buy yourself a valve cover gasket. Take the valve cover off and set those valves, because two things kill these Honda engines that keep them from lasting to, 4 or 5, 600,000 miles in some cases. And that is valves that are too tight. They haven't been adjusted, and they start to hold the valve open and they burn a valve. That's one. An ignition coil that fails and fouls that spark plug and you get a misfire. That's two. Those are things you really need to watch closely on these things. So make sure that you adjust those valves. You use good quality coils. I mean, you can use any coil you want, but our suggestion is the Motor Rad because they are tough. They last and they work very well. We use them all the time. So, that's our thing though. But as far as what you can do for free, you can adjust those valves. Get yourself a feeler gauge and set them.
So you can make a little project out of it.
Is that something that I could do, or is that
Of course.
to take to like a mechanic?
Oh no, you can do it. Just make sure you follow the instructions. Watch a YouTube video. I don't have one yet, but I'm gonna make one. I think it's pretty easy. You get the feeler gauge. There's one nut. You give a eighth of turn, a quarter turn to the left counterclockwise, and then there's a screw, and you use a flat screwdriver and you tighten it up, loosen it up until that feeler gauge just barely has any drag on it at all. And then you hold that screw steady and tighten that nut back up, and you're done. It's that simple. You've got to make sure that the valve is not open when you're doing this. You'll see the cam lobes and how they rotate on the eccentric and push the valve open. You just have them pointing up so they're not pushing the valve open at all, and then you set them one cylinder at a time down the line is going to be easiest for the at-home person doing it. But yeah, you can definitely set valves on an engine like this one.
Okay. Yep. And then one other question was I'm pretty sure. So I had two issues with my EVAP system. I had an IMRC runner solenoid control valve that the plastic nipple broke off. I replaced that. And then it was interesting. I started the car up and drove it 20 miles. Check engine light turned off. Came back out of church, turned the car on. Check engine light was off. Drove a couple miles and turned back. Two codes. I'm wondering if it realized the one was gone, but then turned back on. And I'm wondering, the symptoms I have is when I put on gas, go to start it back up, and it'll kind of fire a little bit. You got to hold the throttle down, and once you run it a little bit, then it evens out. It's fine.
Yeah, it could.
I should look at it here.
It could have done that. It could have had one code gone away, and then I thought it was fine and went back off and back on again. But those intake manifold runner control valves they're common to fail. It's pretty normal part that we replace on it. Sometimes we got to replace the whole manifolds if they wear out and break inside on that shaft. And carbon.
So nothing to do with the EVAP side, or that will give the EVAP code.
No, it shouldn't. But a leaky intake manifold can give both an intake manifold runner control issue and an EVAP code. Let's say if the end of the shaft and the manifold is leaking on the end of it, that could give you both. So inspect that real closely. Take a look at it and see what you got.
Yep. And then the last question would be, is it pretty common for those motors when they get up there around that 200,000 miles to kind of burn some oil?
Some, yeah. Some. Now, if it's burning like let's say a half a quart in 3,000 miles, oil change, you're still safe. If it's burning more than a quart every 3,000 miles, like a couple quarts, the motor's on its way out. It's got stuck piston rings. It's got worn cylinders. It's just going to use more and more. It's kind of a Honda thing. Not all of them do it, but if it happens,
we see so many with tons of miles on them, but that's what'll usually happen.
Yep.
Seldom do they throw a rod or lose bearings or anything like that. It's usually they start burning the oil, and then reliability and dependability starts going away because of that oil fouling that's happening.
Sure. Yep. And I would say I'm probably more than half a quart, but I'm less than 2 quarts for that 3,000.
Yeah, you might try an engine oil. You might try an engine oil system engine oil system cleaner in there. Just try it and see if maybe that would help. Maybe it could clean up some stuff around the engine that maybe would help. And some people will do the evaporative emissions cleaner where you suck it in through the vacuum line and it gives some cleaner that gets into the intake. And sometimes you can get fortunate. I've seen people go so far as even to try to soak their cylinders and see if they can loosen up carbon that might build up around the rings that could be holding them, where they makes them a little more prone to burn oil. Lots of different things, but usually once they start burning, it's a usual indication of internal wear that isn't going away.
Okay. Is that something that you can still run it for quite a while? I've had the vehicle since 150, and it seems like the oil consumption's kind of been there.
Yeah, you can run it that way, and eventually it will, like I said, it'll either start fouling spark plugs, or sometimes if you burn enough over time, you'll damage the catalytic converters, and then you'll start getting some codes that way. But they're pretty tough. It seems like they'll go a long ways, and you get other people have the oil burning, and they're done. And it just at some point it'll just say enough, and the dam opens.
Sure. Well, that makes sense. So.
Well, thanks for being a hoodie and
give us some pointers.
Yeah, no problem. Keep listening. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you guys. I appreciate it.
You bet. Take care.
Yep, you as well.
All right, that does it for another episode of the Under the Hood Show. This is the podcast, YouTube video podcast thing. That thing that you do afterwards.
Yeah, this is the afterwards. Russ and I are going to go down and meet a friend of the show after this for lunch. He invited us a long time ago.
Got a meeting.
And he just talked about, he's came back from an automated vehicles conference. He's involved with the state, and so that'll be interesting to see what he learned. So we're kind of eager to hear what that's about, and so we're going to have to wrap it up and get our stuff done here. So,
all right, everybody, take care, and we'll see you next week